They say the Constitution is just paper, or at least some presidents have said so, but I think it's more like glass. Strong, fairly flexible, until, that is, too much pressure gets applied from too many sides, and then you start to hear it creak. This week, that sound is getting louder. Let me show you 5 stress test points, all different but all hitting the same fracture lines in the system we're supposed to trust. I'm a bit under the weather. I'm going to do my best to get through this. Please bear with me. Let's start in California. A federal court just heard arguments over the state's new congressional map. The Justice Department says it may violate the Constitution by using race to shape outcomes. California Democrats say it gives Latino voters a stronger voice. Republicans say it's a power grab. Either way, here's the deeper question. Are we drawing districts to reflect the people or just to control the outcome before a single vote gets cast? This, as I'm sure you know, is not new. Even all the way back in 1812, Governor Elbridge Gerry signed off on a map so twisted that critics called it a gerrymander. And we've been fighting over map rigging ever since. Lovely. In Reynolds v. Sims, the Supreme Court reminded us, legislators represent people, not trees or acres. But when the map becomes the election, civic trust collapses. The persuasion stops being the point. Now to Mississippi. The Supreme Court just agreed to hear the case of Terry Pitchford, a black man on death row, and his lawyers say the prosecutor used jury strikes to keep black citizens off the panel. The same pattern that got the prosecutor rebuked in the Curtis Flowers case. This echoes a deeper American wound. In the 1930s, the Scottsboro trials showed how justice breaks down when juries are handpicked to reflect power, not peers. The court later found that those boys had been denied fair counsel and that juries drawn along racial lines could never deliver real justice. The Sixth Amendment promises an impartial jury. The 14th promises equal protection. But if prosecutors can filter juries by race, then the trial isn't a safeguard, it's theater. Meanwhile, in Massachusetts, a woman named Hilda Ramirez Sanan, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Sanan, is suing ICE. She says agents surrounded her car outside a courthouse in unmarked vehicles, shattered the windows, and detained her without warning, with her children in the car, including one with a disability. Her lawyers say it was a terrifying show of force with no clear legal basis. ICE hasn't commented, but this isn't some outlier. 100 years ago, the Palmer raids swept up immigrants and so-called radicals in mass arrests with little regard for due process. The Constitution was treated as optional back then, at that time at least, during the Palmer raids, because fear made enforcement feel urgent. That's why we have the Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure against unreasonable searches and seizures. It's not there for when things are calm. It's there for exactly this kind of pressure. And next, trade policy. Right now, big companies like Costco and Revlon are racing to file refund claims. They paid tariffs under a Trump-era emergency powers law. And if the Supreme Court strikes those powers down, they want their money back. About $130 billion in tariffs were collected under this approach, and the clock is ticking. The deeper issue here is the Constitution gives Congress the power to tax and set tariffs, but presidents now lean heavily on emergency powers to bypass gridlock. And suddenly, major chunks of the economy and economic policy are set without a vote. This isn't a technicality. Markets run on predictability, and if economic rules can change on a single executive decision, that's not stability. It's improvisation with global consequences. Finally, one of my favorite things in the world, libraries. Across the country, librarians are being pressured, threatened, and even fired, often for refusing to remove books about gender, identity, or sexuality. You know, land of the free. One former Wyoming librarian just won a $700,000 settlement after being forced out for protecting LGBTQ+ materials. Back in 1982, the Supreme Court took up a case called Board of Education v. Pico. This is impossible to say while a plurality, wow, that word, of justices said school boards can't remove books just because they dislike the ideas inside. Because when we start banning books, we're not just deciding what's appropriate, we're narrowing who gets to be visible, who gets asked questions, who gets to be heard. Go watch yesterday's video, the Sunday video. So what do these stories have in common? Well, they're not isolated fights. For one, they're stress tests on our maps, our juries, our rights to safety, our control over economic levers, and our access to ideas. The founders designed a system of checks and procedures. They were slow on purpose and vulnerable by design because they believed legitimacy had to be earned, not enforced. And they left it to us to hold the line, not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard. So, as we head into 2026, here's the real question, or a real question. Will we only defend the outcomes we tend to like, or will we defend the constitutional procedures that let a free people keep correcting course? Because once those procedures erode, we don't just risk the next crisis. We risk losing the republic altogether.